All right, let's get the spotlight where it belongs. This big, beautiful bill in the Trump accounts. I mean, you can almost hear the marketing in the name, right? These things are popping in headlines again, but I gotta say, it's nothing new under the sun. All this noise. I've seen tighter vaults in Newark and more creative accounting in Atlantic City. So, what are we really dealing with here? Think of these accounts as off the grid capital. Not exactly buried in the backyard, but not front and center on a public spreadsheet either. They weren't born yesterday. Rumors started swirling around the original campaign, quiet at first, like whispers at a bad sit-down. Suddenly, they're everywhere.
Yeah, Vinny. You know, there's something about the way these accounts get talked about that just rings familiar. Not just in DC. I mean, you see this stuff on every kind of op. The moment you start hearing, "Trust me, it's taken care of," that's when my ears perk up. The details themselves? Sometimes messy, sometimes cleaner than you'd expect. But there's always a pattern. Money sidelined for special uses, held just tight enough it's hard to track. What grabs me here is how fast these things become leverage. Before you know it, somebody's got a secret, and power shifts in the shadows.
Right, and let's not kid ourselves. This is Nixon playbook stuff, just with glossier PR. Back in the day, they called it a fund for the cause. I remember a Jersey councilman, not saying any names, but this guy kept his power stacked in three places: legit accounts, street envelopes, and what he called the rainy day stash. Media'd scream about dumpster contracts or pothole funds, but they never looked where the juice really was. Power respects power, and sometimes power hides in plain sight. You distract with noise, print up a big bill, make a little fuss. Meanwhile, the real action's under the fold, just out of view. That's old as time, my friend.
And as we talked about in that episode on government shutdowns, control isn't about overt maneuvers half the time. It's about who writes the footnotes, who keeps their pockets lined just enough to call in a favor without ever saying the word. The Trump account's got some folks thinking it's innovation, but really, it's a rerun, with higher stakes and flashier headlines. What's that thing you always say, Vinny? The streets remember what the courts forget?
Exactly. And the smart ones play both sides. Let's pull back the curtain. Who really benefits from these accounts? It ain't just about lining pockets, it's about leverage. You got financial capital, political capital, and that kind of social insurance. You want to push a bill, run interference, or just make a rival sweat. Sometimes these accounts are less about the money and more about what you can hold over someone. I might be wrong, but every time you see sudden silence from the opposition, that's your tell. They're holding something, or they're afraid someone else is.
That's classic compartmentalization. From the Ranger side of things, every op's built around who knows what and who doesn't. Create a slush fund. You get plausible deniability. If the thing goes south, someone downstream eats the fallout, not the folks calling the shots. I've seen versions of this overseas. Military budgets with, let's call them, discretionary line items. Those lines fund everything from gear to alliances you don't see in the paperwork. The real risk, though, comes when those lines blur and the secret's held too tight. Nobody's quite clear whose leash they're on, and one wrong move, the blowback gets heavy, fast.
You want a masterclass in risk? Look at Watergate. The real damage wasn't the act, it was the cover, the hush money, and the buried evidence. What started as "it's nobody's business" turned into a national scandal because somebody thought the safe was safer than it was. You can swap in Clinton's foundation headaches or any number of big-name slip-ups. The thread? It's always somebody thinking they're the smartest in the room until the room flips the lights on. Ask the families, though. They're left holding more than a news cycle. Sometimes it's their whole legacy on the line.
That's the reputational angle a lot of people miss, especially with family names at stake. Miss a detail, or trust the wrong shadow banker. And it's not just lawyers in the living room. It's watchdogs, rivals, even friends, all sniffing around wondering who knew what and when. I always mix this up. But it's like that line, if you're not careful, you end up famous for all the wrong reasons.
All right, let's bring this down to the ground for the folks listening. Here's the deal. If you ever catch a whiff of these so-called rainy day funds or backdoor accounts in your orbit, treat them like you'd treat a rattlesnake on a playground. Red flags, lack of records, weird transfer patterns, sudden, trust me, it's nothing, explanations. Due diligence ain't paranoia, it's self-defense. If somebody can't show you exactly where the money comes from and goes, you don't ask nice, you get sharp. There's a difference between security and secrecy. One protects, the other destroys. Or, as Machiavelli put it, men judge more by the eye than by the hand, but it's what's inside the safe that'll ruin you if you're careless.
You know, that's spot on. In my world, uncertainty gets people hurt. Or worse. I remember this family in Europe, tangled up with what they thought was a legit investment. Turns out, the whole thing was a front for moving off the books cash. And when the authorities came knocking, it got ugly. It's not just about the legality, it's about trust. Transparency is your best asset in a high-risk environment. If you suspect something's off, my advice? Document everything. Leave a trail. And if you feel out of your depth, walk away or get outside help. Not every situation calls for heroics. Sometimes the smartest play is to step back, regroup, or, if need be, quietly expose the whole thing.
And don't confuse boldness with stupidity. If you gamble, gamble with your eyes open and your back covered. You want to keep a secret, make sure it's worth keeping. Otherwise, walk fast. The next headline ain't worth your peace of mind or your family's future. And hey, Ranger, always a pleasure getting down to brass tacks with you.
Same here, Vinny. Good chat, as always. Folks, keep an eye out, take care of each other, and remember, this isn't the last time we're digging beneath the surface. We'll be back. See you next time on The New Sentinel.